All right, thank you for staying with us from that interesting conversation. Well, agri still has to do one way or the other with our next discussion, but the Nigerian economy has been on a roller coaster ride as the ripple effect of the COVID-19 pandemic still remains visible on key sectors of the economy. However, the year 2022, being a pre-election year, will probably not be significantly different from the past years, as widespread poverty, unemployment, and falling consumer purchasing power are expected to persist. As Nigerians kick off the new year with high optimism, despite unresolved macroeconomic fundamentals, economists are of the view that issues around forex, fuel price increase, rising debts, inflation, new taxes will lead the trend of key economic issues that will shape the economy this year. However, Nigeria's GDP has also been projected to expand in 2022, albeit at a slower pace than in 2021, as the low base effect that powered growth this year fades. Well, I introduced him earlier. He's the Deputy President of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He's going to be helping us understand basic economic issues that will shape the year 2022. I'm Mr. Gabriel Idausa. Good afternoon, sir. It's good to see you.
Good afternoon.
I think this is the first time I'm seeing you this year. Happy New Year. Yeah, so there are a lot in that document talking about the briefing that the LCCI had earlier this week. But can we do an overview of the basic issues that you think will clearly shape the economy and the business community in 2022?
Essentially, the basic things that the document tried to address was the budget revenue, budgeted revenue, how realizable was it going to be, debt servicing, which is still taking about 80-90% of our net revenue, and then of course the inflation, and then the very large non-economic direct issue of security, because everything else can only move if the security moves. So there's a huge concern about security and about the continued success of government efforts to degrade the threats to security in more than 20-30 states, 20-25 states of the country where it is significant across the north and the middle belt. So these are the overarching issues around which the economy is going to operate. Under that, we are looking at specifics. For example, how fast can we get power to continue to make a difference in our capacity to compete with other countries who do not have our power problems. So that's a major issue. Also, the completion of some key infrastructure projects that can change the game. The rail lines that have started, we want to see that movement of goods out of Lagos ports should completely move to rails. If that can happen this year, with the completion of the two rail lines, the old line and the standard gauge, and the Ibadan inland port, which means that most importers and exporters do not even need to come to Lagos anymore. You can drop your products in Ibadan if you're an exporter, and you can pick up your imports from Ibadan if you're an importer. So those are key events that we expect to happen this year. Also, the business community is looking at the second Niger Bridge, the Boni Bodo road and rail and bridges, and then two other bridges on the Benue River. These are major economic arteries. If all of these open, then we begin to see a lot more economic growth, because the constraints to growth apart from security are this fundamental infrastructure. If I'm an exporter of products and I manage to complete production, I have to move them to the ports, and they have to leave the ports immediately. Right now, exporters find their products sitting in the port for 2 months, 3 months, and if they are perishables, they get damaged. And then just moving goods from the ports to the mainland has been calculated to be more expensive than the cost of freight from China to Lagos, just because of the infrastructure involved in moving the goods with all the human blockades and checkpoints and all of that. So these are the things that are driving the outlook. If a significant number of them can be addressed, then the 2-3% we are looking at in terms of projected growth rate can easily become 5 or 6 or 7%. It's just a matter of putting a handle on these key things that are there and that can redefine the picture if they are isolated and addressed and their importance is recognized. Just freeing up the Lagos port alone and let goods move in and out very quickly. Can make 1 or 2% difference in our GDP.
That's true. That's true. I totally agree with you. And looking at the projections and reprojections that we have had, now the private sector plays an important role. According to that report, accounts for about 80% of total economic activities in Nigeria. How conducive would you say is the environment for them? And what do you think are the quick wins? What can government do to attract more of these guys so that they can take charge of all of these major projects and we stop the self borrowing?
Well, I think, first of all, it should be clear that the business community are not expecting miracles. They are not suggesting for 1 minute that this government should solve all the problems that have started since 1960. So those infrastructure problems that are there, the power problems that are there, they are major constraints.
Yes.
But what the business community is saying is that we should gain more traction. We should move quicker. When it comes to power, for example, it takes several years to build a thermal power plant or a hydro power plant. But in less than 6 to 9 months, you can easily build solar power in several across the country. So what the business community is essentially saying is that both the private sector and the public sector should take the quick wins. So when it comes to power, for example, local governments, state governments, federal governments, find out everything you can do to stimulate solar power. There are a lot of things the government can do at all levels. Say, for example, a local government simply saying, we will provide this land for any solar power company that wants to set up solar panels in this local government. It's free of charge, we make the land available, or we give a little token charge. That changes the game for a lot of people in the solar power business. And if we now say that we will provide, local governments, state governments will provide free training for solar power installation. Solar power requires a lot of young people to be trained, and that itself is a major industry. A few people are now training these people, but if government just take that cost, all of them, off that sector, for example, and say, as our own contribution to ramping up power, any young school leaver, any university graduate who wants to learn solar power installation, we give you a scholarship, you can go and do it. So solar power companies will have an excess supply rather than a shortage that you now have of people who have the skills. So what we expect government to do is to look for those quick wins to address those key issues. While we are waiting for those big power plants to be finished in some years to come, the Zungeru, Mambila, and the various thermal plants, let us quickly address these issues. And then for the power plants that are already existing, the issue of gas supply, a lot of the thermal plants don't have enough gas.
Yes.
And so, again, government has the capacity to address the issues, militating reduced supply. So those are the kind of things we are saying government can do. The big things that will take many years, we are not going to hold you to it. But the things that can be fixed in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, put the energy behind it and let it be done. We in the private sector are ready to do the investments, but they need government to sort out a few things. For example, just a few days ago, the government approved the Diaspora Investment Trust Fund.
Yes, true.
That can open billions of US dollars
To come in.
of our people who want to invest in Nigeria, but they want an organized channel for that investment. For example, if Nigerian doctors want to build hospitals in Nigeria, they need an organized way of bringing that money in, having it in the hands of trusted fund managers and managing the building and management of the hospital. They are ready to do it. The funds are there outside. So it is those few things that government needs to plug in. The private sector is actually more than 80%, if you really come to it. But the important thing is that government enabling effort. The government is doing a lot. They enable the business the Presidential Enabling Business Council has done a lot of work. There's a lot of improvement, but there's still a lot more to be done because of the sheer enormity of the issues that were there before the efforts started by the Presidential Enabling Business took off. So if the government says, okay, let's continue to identify those quick wins and deal with them very quickly, the private sector will follow. The same thing like today, you probably had the news about the Pan-African payment system. That is something that is wonderful for small scale enterprises. If I want to sell goods to Ghana now, my customer in Ghana does not need dollars. He can pay CD into his account in Accra and I get my payment. If I want to import from Ghana, I don't need to look for dollars. So I want to import from Kenya. Now, gradually I have to look for dollars to pay my supplier in South Africa or Kenya. That has happened. So gradually, a lot of the constraints are being removed. But you need consciousness on the side of government to say, how can we fast track this? How can we scale up? There are good ideas. How can we apply it to a wider audience, to a wider beneficiaries? And how can we make it faster? So upskill, move faster. That's what private sector is saying. There's no real miracle about solving all the problems that we have. But there are things that can be done in a short time. And those should be done while we are waiting for the big ones.
Let's look at global economic development. Of course, COVID is one of it that we must still talk about. Omicron variant. I think we will have some new variants out again. Yes. Different names all around. Fluctuation also in the price of crude. But that has been looking fairly good lately. What impact do you see on that commodities aspect and the global angle? What are you thinking around that?
Well, the general estimate is that prices of crude of oil will be in the range they are in now, 60, 70, thereabouts. So I think we are good for this year.
We are.
The month-to-month or day-to-day fluctuations will not be significant. So for Nigeria, again, our price, the pricing we use for our budget is even lower than that. Yes. So we are safe in terms of that. But most important for Nigeria now is that Nigeria it is already a fairly diversified economy. So the referencing to oil price is becoming less relevant to Nigeria. The referencing now is more about the export of non-oil products and services, from IT to entertainment to diaspora remittances that are coming in. These sources are bringing in more foreign exchange than oil. That is the statistical fact that we already have. So that image of Nigeria as an oil economy, it does not match what is on ground. And I think it's important for that to be understood and to be recognized. So we want to see a lot more government effort, for example, in expanding the channels for diaspora investments to come in and how those diaspora funds are put into productive use. A lot of diaspora remittances now come for expenses, for family to pay school fees, to meet day-to-day needs. But a larger part of that can come just for investments, because there is investable funds by the same people there that can come in once we have it organized, and it can, in fact, become much higher than the oil revenue we are all thinking about. It's already a bit higher than that, but it can become multiples of that if we recognize it, formally recognize it as a major source of growing the Nigerian economy.
Let's not look at a lot of recommendations actually in that document, but let's just look at a few of them, like the forex issue, talking about unified exchange rates, which is needed, but I don't see how that is going to happen anytime soon. I don't know, maybe if we have more support and more funds coming, and also making the environment conducive for MSMEs in particular, small businesses. Just like my guest here earlier, we talked about how technology and agriculture and all of that, then clarity in policy directions and consistency in policy directions. What can we stay on some of this? What are the specifics if you're looking at these recommendations? What is SCCI saying?
Well, we have always advised a single currency, because if you look at it in very plain language, a dollar is a dollar.
Yes.
So it's like you want to buy a bag of rice. In one store, the rice is 450 naira for the bag. You go to another store, it's 510. It's the same bag of rice. So why should the dollar have this rate for that purpose, another rate for that purpose? It's never really been something that can be justified by any kind of economic analysis or reasoning. It is just the central bank has inherited some of those structures that had different rates. And every year we are seeing in the last 2-3 years, we have seen every effort to narrow that gap. I think the central bank is moving us slowly but steadily in that direction. We'll probably get there in good time. On the SMEs and their issues, that's why I gave example of the payment system.
Yes.
The SMEs have quite a range of issues, but the ones that are most important are the ones that one enables them to have access to finance at the rates they can afford and enables them to process their transactions. So we still need to do a lot more in providing access to finance for SMEs at the rates they can afford. There's a lot of funds available now, but some of the rates are too high. They're still too high for them. So we need to significantly increase that. We also need to do capacity building, as you just mentioned, your last audience, guest, that generally one of the things that small enterprises lack is the ability to organize and manage their business.
Yes.
And that support must come from government and the private sector, starting with people who can organize them, who can bring SMEs together, form them into structures, cooperative societies, associations. It's extremely important to grow SMEs. So long as you have a lot of SMEs that are not in any organized association or framework, you can't even help them.
Yes.
You can't look for every single dressmaker in Lagos to help. But once you have all the dressmakers form into a fashion associations in each part of Lagos, Ikeja, Surulere, and so on, you have them as a target. You can go there and support them. So the first thing we want to do is encourage SMEs to belong to associations where they can be captured in any sort of, even organizing finance is easier. They can get much lower cost of funds once you are organized. Once you belong to a cooperative, your cost of funds goes down dramatically than you as an individual going to a bank. A cooperative going to a bank will probably get easily 10, 20%, 30% lower cost of borrowing just because it's a cooperative society, because the risk is much lower. So one important thing that we have to do for cooperatives, both for themselves and the government and the rest of the Chamber of Commerce, we are encouraging SMEs to be organized. Recently, we got approval for a cooperative society, an LCCI cooperative society within LCCI, so that a lot of small-scale members and potential members can not only join the chamber, but they can also join the cooperative society, which give them immediate access to funding, to training, to support, which otherwise you will not get if you are operating as a single SME. So these are some of the things we are proposing and we are driving, and we do hope that the message will go.
Intelligent conversation there. I must thank you, Mr. Dausa, who is the Deputy President of Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you so much for spending your time to at least discuss these basic issues, very important issues. I must agree. I must tell you. Thank you so much for your time, and do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you, Tolu.
All right, then it's time to look at, to review trading performance at the Nigerian Exchange Limited. And joining me to review this is a bank and stockbroker supposed to join me via phone, Mr. Tajuddin Olayinka. Well, let's look at the figures for today first. The market is closing negative with all share index down 0.02%. Top gainers, we have Transcorp, we have Chi PLC, we have Regalinks, we have Jais Bank, International Breweries. Top losers for today, we have NEM Insurance, we have Custodian, UACN, FTN, Cocoa, and Japan Gold. Mr. Olayinka, can you hear me? Good afternoon, sir.
I can hear you. Good afternoon.
Yes, I thought the market was going to sustain the positive trend we saw yesterday, but the market is closing down 0.02% today. How does this come to you?
Okay, yeah, the slight drop in the index today really doesn't portend or say anything that is negative in the real sense of it, because if you look back to the last 5 trading sessions, if you exclude today's trading and then you look back to the 5 trading sessions, you'll have seen that the index moved significantly by 2.3%, an average of about 0.46% per day. So if you factor that into what has happened, and with the fact that most of the stocks that lifted the market yesterday didn't really move today, but still sustained the kind of high volume activities, we suggest to anyone that we might be seeing the commencement of year-end rally with what we are seeing in the market. So what happened today is more profit taking. It's nothing so significant as to suggest that the market was beginning to have a bearish trend. No, the bullish trend is still there, but of course, investors who are so sophisticated, who have capacity to do research and forecast the market, will still be there to take advantage of what most of these research companies will do in their year end. So what we are seeing is I think it's how we even call it flat, because it's not so significant. So, and like I mentioned earlier, we might be seeing the commencement of year-end rally, even though the market dropped today insignificantly.
All right, thank you, Mr. Tajuddin Onayinka. Do enjoy the rest of your day. He's an investment banker and stockbroker.
Thank you.
All right, then. Effiong.
Yes, trading basically stayed in the flat territory from early transaction in the hours till almost the closing hours, and we found out that investors' interest, many of them eyed banking securities, and that is for a known fact that there is expectation that the year end for 2021, they are expecting that in the month of February and early March, the result of all the 2021 year for the banks and the entire industry should be available in the stock market. And so fund managers and strategic investors, move in to take positions on these particular banks. There are many of them, but we are not to mention their names, but you've got to do your own analysis, meet with your stockbroker, your accountants, and then decide where your portfolio, will grow. We've seen year-to-date growth of the market is significant, something above 3%, but the question is sustainability. And I know that, and I believe that for the first quarter of this new year, the market is likely to stay largely in the positive territory. After that, I do not know, I cannot predict very much what we will have, because of the fact that we will be gradually moving into a period that politics would begin to rule, the economy.
Well, let's see how it all plays. Tomorrow is the last trading day for this week. We hope that we could end it positive.
Yes, with what we've seen today, I think the investors may come back, to pick more of average stocks. So let me hold optimism that we are going to close the week positive.
All right, thank you very much. My colleague Effiong Ekop will continue discussion when we get back to the studio.
Thank you.
All right, then Asian shares were dragged lower by weakness in Chinese economic data today, although investors seems relieved that U.S. inflation data was not hot enough to force even faster monetary tightening by the Federal Reserve's. U.S. consumer price inflation was at its highest in nearly 40 years. Data showed overnight, but it didn't come as a surprise, as key intact expectations for the Fed tapering or timeline for the first rate rise as early as March. Asian shares fell in line with Chinese stocks after data showed mainland bank lending fell more than expected in December, causing property and consumption sectors to sink. Chinese blue chips dropped 1.3%, while MSCI's broadest index of Asian Pacific shares outside Japan was flat after recording its biggest daily gain in a month on Wednesday. Japan's Nikkei lost nearly 1% after surging near 2% a day earlier. The uneven performance in Asia followed small gains on Wall Street and overnight, and the S&P 500 rising 0.28% and Nasdaq Composite up 0.23%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 0.11%. The Federal Aviation Administration began publishing notices earlier today that detailed the extent of potential impact of new 5G wireless service on sensitive aircraft electronics. The FAA has been in talks with airplane makers, airlines, and wireless carriers to reduce the impact of new wireless service set to begin on January 19th. The FAA has warned that potential interference could affect sensitive airplane instruments like altimeters, but on Wednesday reported progress. AT&T and Verizon Communications, which won nearly all of the C-band spectrum in an $80 billion auction last year, January 3rd agreed to buffer zones around 50 airports to reduce the risk of interference. They also agreed to delay deployment for 2 weeks, averting an aviation safety standoff. The wireless industry provided additional transmitter location data, and FAA said it was able to determine that the initial 5G deployment aircraft will be able to safely land in low visibility conditions on some runways without restrictions. Oil prices on international markets slipped today, trimming big gains from the previous 2 sessions amid uncertainty over near-term demand as cases of highly contagious Omicron variant of the coronavirus surge around the globe. Well, U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude recorded a dip in price of 0.15% to sell at $82.52 per barrel. Brent sells for $84.59, registering a downward price margin of 0.09%. Bonnie Light's performance is continuing with its winning streak with a 1.98% uptick to sell at $85.54 per barrel. For the OPEC basket, crude oil dealers offer $82.13 per barrel with a 0.46% increase in price. Well, that's our show today. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow, same time.
In the month of January, on the 1st of January 2012, then President Goodluck Jonathan declared state of emergency in northeastern states where terrorism thrived. On the 4th, meeting the needs of those with visual impairment gets global focus as the United Nations marks World Braille Day. And back in Nigeria, still on the 4th, Ogune Day keeps the plight of oil-producing communities on the front burner. Nigeria will remember those who paid the supreme price in defense of the nation. On the 16th of January 2012, nationwide strike over the removal of subsidy on petrol was suspended by the NLC. Stay with TVC News.
Genuine business people desirous of success in today's environment ignore the taxman only at their own peril.
Under the oversight of this board, the FIRS will continue its transformation into a premier revenue collecting agency.
For up-to-date and accurate information on your obligations, duties and rights under the various tax laws in Nigeria, watch Tax Matters on TVC News Thursday 6:30 p.m. to 7 p.m.